Hari Om, Shastra Katha. This is from Ramayana. In the previous episode of Shastra Katha, we had narrated how Sri Ramchandra neutralized famous demons like Tadaka and her son Subahu and Marich. And that's how Viswamitra succeeded in completing his yagya, for which Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman they were brought from Ayodhya to their place known as Siddhashram. Vishwamitra was extremely pleased with the deeds of Sri Ramchandra. Particularly, it was unthinkable that he could kill Taraka and Subahu, and he could hit Marich so hard that he fell hundreds and hundred kilometers far. Now, Vishwamitra wanted to do a favor to Sri Ramchandra because he was a young prince who had come all the way from Ayodhya to his place to protect him. Just to remind you, earlier Vishwamitra gave him the mantras and the process by which Sri Ramchandra could get all the divine weapons which he got. So then Vishwamitra said that, look, there is a kingdom of King Janak known as Janakpuri. It's in the border state of Mithila and Nepal. Like Nepal claims that Janakpuri is in their part, and actually the states were not so demarcated in those days, and the area was known as Mithila, not the whole of Nepal, but a small part. And Janakpuri belonged to Mithila. Now, Janakpuri now belongs to Nepal. He said that king is extremely virtuous, Janak, and he is performing a huge yagya. In earlier times, this was the major pastime for the Indians. There used to be some great yagya, and some of these yagyas were performed, say, for 12 years and 100 years. And in some cases, we find mention of yagya continuing for 1,000 years. That means generation after generation, we're continuing with that yagya. Or maybe somebody just added some zeros. And Hindus have such a love for zero that they just keep on adding zeros to anything they want. So if they want somebody, they want to say that someone lived for long, they will say that he lived for 10,000 years or maybe 100,000 years, like that. So zero as if had no value for them. So Vishwamitra said that King Janak is performing a huge yagya, and apart from watching that yagya, you should also have a look at the huge bow. It was extremely heavy, made of pure gold, and gold is extremely heavy. Its density is very high. Those of you who have handled gold, supposing you have 1 kg of gold, it makes such a small ball. And because we are accustomed to handling smaller things, we will be surprised to see that it's so heavy. Gold is very heavy. And that bow, it was Lord Shiva's bow, with which he had killed some very famous demons. That's another story which is not mentioned here. So, Lord Shiva, you remember the story where it was said that Lord Shiva had burned down god of lust, Kamdev, Kandarp. So maybe it was believed that Lord Shiva lived there only because later on he went to Mount Kailash, where he is supposed to be staying in the present times. And probably his bow was indeed there, which was handed over to Janak for safekeeping. Later it will be described that when Sri Ramchandra wanted to see that bow, it was kept on a carriage. The carriage was on the wheels, and 5,000 able bodied soldiers were pushing it. It just shows how heavy it was. And the team, like some of the disciples of Vishwamitra, along with Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman, they started moving from Siddhashram to Janakpuri. Those of you who have map of India, If you imagine, point somewhere near Patna, Patna is the capital of Bihar, near Patna, and from there you can kind of draw a triangle: Ayodhya, Patna, crossing the Ganga, reaching the other side of Ganga, and then Vaishali, Muzaffarpur, and then you move towards Nepal. That's the route. Many historians who are interested in the story of Sri Rama, they have drawn maps how they must have taken the route, etc. So that must have been the route. So on way, Vishwamitra told Sri Ramchandra many stories. And one of the first stories that he told was of descent of Ganga. Just imagine, Ayodhya is basically a small town. Even today, it's a small town. And Saryu River, on the banks of which it's established, is a very small river. And one who has grown on the banks of Saryu, suddenly seeing Ganga, and maybe Ganga was in spate, it's flowing full. Huge river. Ganga is a huge river. And particularly near Patna, see, near Patna, it's more than 5 kilometers wide, and I've seen it. It's frightening. Sight is frightening. Particularly during monsoon, it's frightening. And Sri Ramchandra was looking with wonder at this river. I wanted to know about the river, and then beautifully, Vishwamitra narrates the story of descent of Ganga. It said, Himavan, who is the king of the Himalayas. We don't know who really Himavan is because his story comes in many books. He had two daughters, Uma and Ganga. They were both beautiful, and Ganga, because of her virtue, went to the heavens. Uma, whose story was later narrated beautifully by Tulsi Das, and how Uma, who is also known as Parvati, and Uma, whose name also comes in Keno Upanishad. So we don't know if these Uma are same or not, but maybe they are same. Because in Keno Upanishad, which is from the Vedas, the name is Uma Hemavati, which means Uma, the daughter of Himavan. So she did lot of tapasya, and that's the specialty of Ramayana. At every stage, they will say that if you want to get anything in this world, you just perform tapasya and you will get. So the evil forces to perform tapasya and got special powers, like they shouldn't be defeated by anybody, like that. Uma was married to Lord Shiva, and this was Lord Shiva's second marriage. Earlier, he was married to Sati, and because of some very unfortunate developments, Sati had to give up her body because she was insulted by her own father for marrying somebody whom her father didn't approve of. That is Lord Shiva. That story doesn't come here, but I just mentioned it. Now, Uma wanted a son from Shiva, but due to some divine mismanagement, gods are also very good at mismanaging things. It was not successful. Instead, the power of Shiva flowed out, and Uma became very angry because of the intervention of some of the gods, and she cursed that their wives would become barren. Now, this is a very interesting concept because indeed the gods do not have children. One or two are mentioned, but in general they don't have, because divine beings cannot have children because they're not like human beings. So the will to have a child, both Shiva and Uma, that resulted in Kartikeya, who became the commander in chief of the gods. He is considered to be the invincible warrior Kartikeya. But His birth itself is divine, not really through the normal process of childbirth. So that is the story of Uma, and then the story moves to Ganga. They are, after all, sisters. Say that in ancient time there was a very virtuous king. No, his name was Sagar. Sagar. The word Sagar has come from Sagar. Sagar means ocean. So Sagar was once performing some yagya, this famous yagya. Yagya keeps coming in the Ramayana. And it was Ashwamedh yagya, in which a horse was let loose to show the power of that king. Now Indra, who is the king of gods, is a mischievous person at times. Earlier we found how, oh no, no, that episode has not yet come. That episode will come in the story of Ahalya. So in Valmiki Ramayana, we find Indra to be acting mischievous at times. In this case, what he did was he wanted destruction of Sagar. So he stole the horse and hid it in the ashram of a sage, Kapil. Kapil Muni's ashram was south of Kolkata. So we are in Kolkata. It's Ganga Sagar. He was there is still an ashram of Kapil, is known as Kapil Muni's ashram. And Kapil Muni's sage Kapil is believed to be the founder of Sankhya system of philosophy, whose theory of creation was accepted by Yoga and later by Vedanta. The most common theory of creation is accepted, which is acceptable to practically every Hindu system of thought, comes from Kapil. So he was a great sage and a philosopher. He was not a philosopher in the sense of thinker. Like in Western philosophy, a philosopher is one who thinks. But in Indian system of thought, a philosopher is one who is a sage and who through his meditation finds out the deeper truths of spiritual world and this world. So Indra took that horse and hid in the ashram of Kapil Muni. And Sagar had 60,000 sons, and they were rude. And this is some very strange thing that I have seen in life. Truly, I have seen. Religious people, people who profess religions, they often turn out to be very rude. Truly spiritual persons are never rude. If a person is truly spiritual, truly given to God, he or she, that is they are never rude. But persons who are into performing religious acts, persons who are into rituals, persons who put lot of tilak, and persons who put tulsi mala and all, wherever you find the marks of religiosity, you better be careful because generally they have a lot of violence within them. In India also you will see that some of these people who are staunch followers of this sect or that sect, marking their head with this kind of ashes or that kind of sandal paste or whatever. There's so much of violence against each other. At times it's unbelievable. You also find that at times when this Kanvar Yatra, they take water to pour at the Shivalinga, the Shiva temple. Their behavior at times is so bad, it's unthinkable. So children of Sagar, they are also arrogant. Although they were taking part in a yajna, they were extremely arrogant and they went searching for the horse. And with great difficulty, they found out the horse in the ashram of Kapil. And they should have been happy finding out the horse. Instead, they started abusing Kapil Muni and said that since you have stolen our horse, let's have a fight. And Kapil Muni knew nothing about that horse because he was lost in deep meditation and there was exchange of hot words. And sage Kapil, because of his spiritual prowess, became extremely furious and just raised his eyebrows in anger, cursed them, and the whole 60,000 lot, they instantly burned down to ashes. it's never a good it's never a good idea to annoy the sages and saints, because we find so many stories in Ramayana and Mahabharata, etc., where some arrogant person was cursed or burned down by these sages. Earlier, we saw how Tadka, who was a yaksha, was born yaksha, and was cursed by a sage to become a demoness. So now, earlier, those of you who are familiar with the topography of South Kolkata, or rather that which lies south of Kolkata, you'll know that there's that Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal. Sorry, it's Bay of Bengal. Sorry, not Indian, Bay of Bengal. But earlier, another great sage, Agastya, he had drunk the entire ocean. That's a different story. We will narrate sometime when the reference comes. So the ashes of these 16,000 just lay there. Hindus want that their dead be burnt, and burnt religiously, and then the remains be immersed in water, which will be carried by the river or through other system to the ocean. Because ocean signifies freedom. Swami Vivekananda, some place says that water on the Himalayas is free, but when it flows through a river, it's bound. When it meets the ocean, it's again free. The soul is free. Somehow it gets trapped, it's bound, and then it again becomes free through spiritual practices. This journey, this journey from freedom through bondage to freedom, in case of souls, is effected through a body. To signify that, we Hindus, we don't bury anybody, we burn them, and we put that remains, that is ashes and bones, etc., in the river, so that it's carried to the ocean. Now, ashes of 60,000 princes had to be carried to the ocean. And how to do it? So Ganga had to be brought, and only Ganga could purify it, Ganga being divine. So three generations after Sagar tried to do tapasya and bring Ganga down from heaven to the earth. They were not successful. Then came Bhagirath. In the Puranic traditions, in the ancient lineage, Sri Ramchandra belongs to the clan of Bhagirath only. And that's why Viswamitra also says that, look, this is a great thing. This great river was brought down from the heavens to this earth by one of your ancestors, Bhagirath. And the name Bhagirath is still considered to be extremely sacred in India. Many people keep the name of their children Bhagirath. And name of Ganga, one name of Ganga is Bhagirathi, because it was brought down by Bhagirath. Now Bhagirath, he did intense tapasya, prayed to Ganga, and ultimately Ganga agreed to come down with the condition that there should be someone to hold her power, because when she falls from the heaven, whatever it might mean, because these are religious stories, and religious stories take divine beings, natural things, and weave them into one according to the human perception. So when we talk about Ganga coming down from the heaven, it's coming down from the Himalayas, no doubt about it. But a story is given there, and in the Western system of thought, it's called mythologies. But mythology doesn't have the right ringtone. The right word is spiritual stories, because through these spiritual stories, we feel connected with the divine. So when you think of Ganga, Ganga coming from the heaven, and through Shiva, etc., you feel a connect. Myths mean something, stories which are far removed from us, but spiritual stories are deeply connected with us. The only person who could take the power of Ganga was Lord Shiva. So now Bhagirath had to do tapasya for towards Lord Shiva. He kept on praying, and ultimately Lord Shiva agreed. Said, "Okay, fine, let Ganga fall, and I will hold its fall." When something falls from a height, because of the gravitational forces, it acquires tremendous force, and it can be ruinous, because the force with which Ganga was about to fall might have taken it to the Netherlands. Netherlands, not the country, Patal Lok we call. That's deep within the earth. So when Ganga was falling, Lord Shiva spread his matty hairs. And Lord Shiva, he being the Lord, so powerful, Lord who is on this earth, and he spread his matted hair. But initially, Ganga, she was behaving like an adolescent. And she wanted to take Shiva along with her on the floor. That is, she was playing pranks with Shiva. After all, she was sister of Uma, and she had some rights to play pranks with her sister, with her brother-in-law. And Shiva became furious because Ganga was trying to show her prowess on Shiva. So he just spread his hair in such a way that Ganga completely lost her way. If you ever chance to go to Gangotri, etc., you'll feel as if that all those mountain ranges and the forests, if you can imagine, as she was matted hair, etc. And just to think that thousands of years ago, these sages, they knew about Gangotri, the origin of Ganga, etc., and how beautifully they wove all these things into story. And I remember the story from my childhood days, and I was so fascinated by this story. This is one of those stories that fascinated me the most. So Bhagirath again had to pray to Shiva to release Ganga. Now Shiva was so furious with Ganga that he distributed them into 7 different rivers. The tradition continues, and they call those places like Devprayag, Karnaprayag, etc., etc. Ultimately, the Ganga started flowing down, and flowing from Gangotri, Uttarkashi, different streams meeting, and finally reaching Haridwar. By the time it reaches Rishikesh and Haridwar, it takes the form of present day Ganga, and from there it flows via Prayagraj, then Kashi, then Patna, Kolkata, and then merges into Bay of Bengal. So when it came, it's a long story, and it took the ashes of the children of Sagar, and finally it was all taken to the ocean. And because of the flow of Ganga, the ocean was again filled up. It was created once again. So this is how Ganga descended from the heaven on the head of Shiva, lost in the matted hair, and released once again. And then Viswamitra tells the story of Samudra Manthan. Now, Samudra Manthan itself being a very interesting story, we'll narrate it in the next talk. Thank you so much.